This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
I've been driving, baby, driving up and down this Michigan road.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome, and thank you, Parker. I'm your host, Jim Ervin, and this is Time Signatures. As I am with all of my guests, I am truly appreciative for the chance to talk to this gentleman today. He is a multi-award-winning, internationally recognized blues harmonica virtuoso, a singer, and masterful showman. He is the only UK or European artist to appear on Chicago's legendary Alligator Records label, and he is one of only 3 UK artists alongside Eric Clapton and Peter Green to win a coveted Blues Music Award. I mean, talk about some incredible company. Now, I could go on, but let's get this gentleman in here. Giles Robson, welcome to Time Signatures, man. I am honored to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Now, first things first, Giles, I know that you have a new album to talk about, and we surely will get to that. But first of all, I'd love to get a few stories from you, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, very good. Talk to me about your earliest memories of music in your life, if you would.
Well, I started off with the violin at school, and I think that was because so I must have been about 7 years old, and a student came in and gave a talk about the violin, and I think I was more jealous of the fact that she had a violin with a lovely case with the green felt interior than I was about playing it. But I did play it, and then I sort of grew tired of it, and then I went on to the saxophone, and was really enjoying that. And my teacher taught me the rudimentary sort of art of improvising, and we had learned some Charlie Parker heads. But back then it was like in the early 90s, it was the days of acid jazz, and he was trying to teach me acid jazz stuff, and I really got into it because of hearing. I used to watch a lot of old movies. I guess I was like an old soul when I was younger. I like the old black and white 40s movies, and I really got into sort of big band jazz, and so I sort of got put off that because I wasn't really learning what I wanted to learn, the sort of the swing and the groove.
Sure.
And then back then there was Roseanne on the TV. We had that in the UK all the time, and they had a great theme tune which had John Duke Logan, a California harmonica player, playing the harp. And I fell in love with that sound. And also there was Will Smith on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. There was an episode where he played a bit of harmonica. And I was on a school trip to Toledo in Spain, and I picked one up. And I remember being in the hotel in Madrid that night and falling in love with the look of this instrument. And when I got back home, I lived in I was born and raised in the Channel Island of Jersey. And we had a local art teacher called Robert Tilling, who he was a blues aficionado and wrote a book on Reverend Gary Davis, and he brought over acoustic blues artists to the island because it was quite expensive to go with full bands. And so literally 2 weeks after I began, I got to see Cephas and Wiggins at the local art centre, and so I saw the real thing there, and that set me off for life, and back then in the early 90s, there was a blues craze going on, and so you have, and I really, I really got into the deep Chicago blues, and what was great about the blues craze, I think I'm a rhythm man, I didn't like Stevie Ray Vaughan as much because it didn't have the same rhythm as say Sonny Boy Number One or Muddy. And what was great about that time was that there was because there was a craze, there was a documentary made on blues called Sweet Home Chicago. Very good documentary, an hour long, that showed on BBC TV. And all of my friends talked about it the next day. And I got to see, there were these little irresistible snippets that are, back then you had no YouTube. All of these snippets are now on YouTube and the full version.
Yes, sir.
And then it was just like these tiny little snippets of Muddy and Wolf and Sonny Boy and Billy Branch with Willie Dixon down at Teresa's Lounge, and it was irresistible to me, and that was it. And I just got addicted to it, and I still am. I mean, one of the things. I mean, I'm 48 now, so I'm coming up to fit, and I'm as in love with it as I ever have been, and I hear new stuff. So those early, those early memories are really magical. And of course, back then you had in the UK, we had these great semi-legal or maybe not legal at all. They're called Charlie Blues Masterwork releases that had all of they're very simple CDs or cassette tapes with black and white covers, and they had
Okay.
all classic stuff from Muddy and the Wolf and Sonny Boy, and we used to pick them up in our local Woolworth store, and I just went around the house with a cassette deck and just played the stuff, and I can remember listening to Little Walter with one of the biggest impressions was Sonny Boy number two, Sonny Boy number one, and Little Walter with Muddy, playing behind Muddy, and there's the
Sure.
sound of that harp is, I mean, I can remember just being entranced by it, really entranced.
Yes, sir. Now, did you have any favorite bands I know you mentioned a couple of musicians just then that you would listen to for inspiration in those early years as you started to get into it?
Yeah, well, I remember actually Sonny Boy number one, his recording of Sugar Mama Blues was a really, even before Sonny Boy 2, but I can remember doing my art homework and listening to um, Sonny Boy Williamson's number two, Let Me Explain, and loving the structure of the riff in the solo. Um, I can vividly remember being driven by my mum up by the airport and just freaking out over Don't Start Me to Talking by Sonny Boy number two. And also my art teacher, Robert Tilling, gave me a load of different tapes. One of those was Buddy Guy's Alone in Acoustic, Buddy Guy and Junior Wells Alone in Acoustic. So stuff like that, I just really, I really, really flipped out over and really, really got into, and there just seemed to be a depth of sound and emotion, but also technique. There was definitely technique there as
Yes,
well.
sir.
But the combination of the technique, but also that emotion wasn't there in sort of jazz or anything. And I think that's what really got me in because I had quite I had a quite a severely alcoholic father and who was sort of drunk at home each day. And I lost so I got raised by my grandparents, but they all passed away, So I think that when I look back on it, I think that it was probably that emotion helped me during that time, but my
Yes,
grandparents
sir.
passed away because I suddenly, I was more into pop stuff, and then suddenly they went one by one because and I had a great grandmother who was actually younger than my grandmother because she was a second wife to my great grandfather, and was sort
Okay.
of um, so they were living next to us, and they sort of were surrogate parents because my dad wasn't working, and my mum was bringing in all the money, and so they sort of looked, and then they left, and I think that was sort of the time that I got into it as well. So I think looking back in retrospect, all these years later, I think that was one of the things that made it stick,
Yes, sir. At what point did you realize that a life in music was absolutely going to be in the cards for you, Giles?
Well, I tried everything not to be a musician. Because
Okay.
I got warned against it, like heavily warned against it by Robert Tilling, the art teacher, my parents, everyone I spoke to said, "Don't do it." And so I spent my twenties. I went to art college and spent my twenties being a graphic designer and an illustrator, and I did a bit of marketing. And then I really couldn't resist it anymore. I'd still played in my spare time, and I grew up in Jersey, and people wanted to, give me money to pursue a career. They wanted to fund an album, and the audience reactions were just amazing. And I was like, there's got to be a future in this, and I love it. And even when I was illustrating, I was listening to music when I was illustrating more than concentrating on the work, I think. So it was, and then I just started to push it and have pushed it ever since. And I've been doing it, pushing it for about 17 years, I think.
Wow. Now, in 2016, you had a chance meeting with none other than the late legendary Grammy winning guitarist Joe Louis Walker at a
Yes,
festival in the Netherlands. As
that's right.
history records, you jammed together that evening. What happened next?
Well, that was it was amazing because the jam went really well. And B, we talked for about 2 hours after. We just geeked out and we got on incredibly well. I mean, like really well. We're very, very similar characters and in many respects, but with our love for the music. And Joe, I think because Joe, just like I said, the music was sort of a medicine for me getting over my grandparents. Music was definitely a medicine for Joe. That's what he told me, and he could see it in me as well. So, and we talked, and then I came up with the idea of doing an acoustic album with Joe because he was doing all of these really rocky sort of albums, which were great. But I thought there was room in there just to, I wanted to really do something that showcased his voice in a low volume setting. So you get all the detail and the nuances of his voice. And I was really into that great Junior Wells album, Come On in This House, the one that he did in the 90s with all the different slide guitar players. And I felt that that album really showcased Junior at his best. They tried a lot of rock crossover stuff with Junior, and you know the thing with harmonica is that it works best at low volume. Even with I mean,
Sure.
Little Walter songs sound like they're loud, but actually they're actually playing quietly, and it's a woodwind instrument. It works better at low volumes. And Junior, Hoodoo Man Blues, the album on Delmark, is actually when you listen to them playing, they're playing at very low volumes, and it brings out the best in his harmonica playing and singing. And I think that when he paired up with Buddy Guy, Buddy sort of got louder over the years to please the rock blues audience, and it sort of stifled Junior's creativity and his voice and his subtlety and his nuances. And when I heard "Come On in This House," it was all there. I mean, it just made you realize how much he could play and his imagination and his feeling for the blues, and I wanted to do the same thing with Joe. And so I suggested it to Joe, and Joe's really he was really I can't believe he's gone, to be honest. He's alive he'll always be alive to me.
Yes,
But
sir.
he was such a positive creative force, and he wanted to try new things, and he wanted to explore, and he wanted to innovate. And so he was up for the idea. He suggested bringing in Bruce Katz, the great keyboard player, and we went to upstate New York to Woodstock, New York, to record the album. And it was for me, it was a really incredible experience that I'll never forget because I really got to experience Manhattan, um, and I really I learned a lot from Joe, in the studio because um, I just watched him with an acoustic guitar, just sitting back, legs spread wide, just like this, like playing out the rhythm. And one thing I learned from Joe, because I went out and performed with him in Mystique, in the Caribbean. He got me out there to the Mystique Festival. And one thing I learned from Joe is how much he would cue the band just from his movements, to get them into the groove. And he certainly did that with me in that album. And it was like music was like coming off his whole body, not just out of the guitar. And so I learned a lot from that, and learned a lot from Joe over the years. And really cannot say how grateful I am to him, for everything that he gave me. And yeah.
Yes, sir. The meeting you had that got you into Alligator Records, this was after you did the album, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I managed to persuade I was on a Dutch label called V2 Records.
Okay.
I managed to persuade them to pay what was actually quite an insanely large budget to do this album. And they distributed Alligator Records. In fact, Bruce Iglauer was the guy that got me with V2 Records in Holland because I'd
Okay.
done this crossover album that he was interested in signing, but he wanted to try and boost up the attention in Europe before taking it over to the States. But then I got bored. I didn't like. I really enjoyed creating. It's like a crossover in a band called the Dirty Aces. It was like a punk rock blues album, and it was full of hooks and designed for radio. And I really enjoyed playing it in the studio, but I didn't enjoy playing it live. And also, it split audiences down the middle because it was almost two blues for rock and two rock for blues. So people didn't know what bag it was in. And so I recorded in one day, I got a new band together and recorded an album called For Those Who Need the Blues, which came out on VG Records. And suddenly everything opened up because I was going back to traditional 12 bar blues. And so that got me with the label. And then I convinced, it sold well, it sold well. And I convinced them to do this album with Joe. and obviously they were impressed with Joe's pedigree and so on. And then they shipped it out to several American labels, but it was immediately clear that Alligator was going to be the one. And we released it on Alligator, and Bruce was very proud to release it, and it became a Living Blues album of the decade, a Blues Music Award-winning album. And what was so good about it was and it did very well on digital radio as well, on Sirius XM, considering it was just traditional blues songs.
Yes,
And
sir.
unfortunately, there's a sort of a received wisdom in the blues world that traditional blues isn't going to do very well, which I think is wrong, because I mean this album was about as uncommercial as you can get, and it did very well commercially. So it's it just shows that there's space for, and I was just proud of it, and I still listen to it because I really I miss Joe, so it really brings Joe
Yes,
back
sir.
to me.
Yes, sir. And I do want to talk about this for just a moment because in 2019, the album did earn a BMA, which put you into a really unique class where only three UK artists have been able to achieve this. Once again, Clapton and Gallagher. That's some kind of bragging rights for you. Talk about that experience, man.
I mean, I had no, I really, I went out there with no, because I'd never been to a Blues Music
Sure.
award before, and I went out there with no preconceptions or any notion that we'd win. And they asked us to perform, and we also on the day, Joe and I performed on ABC Breakfast TV, and then they brought us backstage, and we did our performance, and then we came back down, and we were backstage, and they announced that we'd won it, and it was just incredible. And Steve Van Zandt was up there, and Maria Muldaur
Wow.
the award, and it was really great, man. And Billy Branch, because I toured with Billy Branch, he was backstage. He looked great. He had like a fedora on and a gold Lansky Brothers jacket, and he said, and because this is just we toured earlier that year or the year before, and he goes, "I guess some of the magic is rubbing off." You know,
That sounds like Billy.
yeah, to come out, and also Joe, Joe. I mean, it was just great, man. I mean, it was a magical. It was such a magical thing, and it was that was it was a great year for awards, and I got to meet many different people. Bruce was there, and Bruce Iglauer, and he was very happy, and because it's a tough business. It's a beautiful business, and it's full of beautiful people, but it's a very niche business.
Yes.
Everyone's, it's very the margins are tight. Everyone's short of cash, and it's hard to get attention. So little magical things, and I'm very grateful to Bruce Iglauer, and he's a great guy. Been a great guy to work with, and so no, it was a magical time, and really it gave me, I'm grateful to Bruce, grateful to Joe, and to Bruce Katz. It really put me on the map, and
Yes,
will
sir.
continue to do so for the rest of my career. So it's a beautiful thing.
Time Signatures is pleased to welcome an endorsement from Bushman Harmonicas. Bushman Harmonicas was founded in 1996 by John Hall, and they are quickly becoming the premier harmonica manufacturer in the world, featuring the Blues Shifter, the most versatile, useful harmonica ever made. It's not a chromatic. This model gives you back that missing key on blow 3 simply by pushing the button on the side of the harmonica. For a look at everything Bushman has to offer, please visit bushmanmusic.com and by all means let them know that Time Signatures sent you. Thank you. Well, and you have a really good fit with the Chicago blues. I mean, because you're enamored with that style anyway. And since that point, the other favorite album of mine that I just absolutely love your work with Chicago legend, former Muddy Waters band leader John Primer. Of course, that's 2024's 10 Chicago Blues Classics, a 10-track jam from start to end. I'd love to hear about that project just a little bit because you and John really seemed like you were having a good time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was it was an amazing meeting, because what happened was I got asked to put together a Chicago Blues Legends tour in the UK. And originally it was going to be Billy Branch, and I asked Billy and Rosa who they wanted to pick as like a young gun, so they picked Jemiah Rogers. And there was another Chicago artist I won't mention, but he was afraid of traveling because it was COVID,
Sure.
and COVID times, and he was afraid of traveling. So I said, "Well, who else do you suggest?" And they said, "Well, let's see if we can get John." And So they brought over John, and we really hit it off musically. He raved about what I was doing, and he said he saw one of my support slots and raved about and it was great, man. And we just really hit it off musically, and it seemed like we had and you can hear it on the album. We have like this telepathic thing with the harp and the guitar. I think because I just listened to all that Chicago stuff religiously, it's like I can predict what he's doing. And he predicts what I'm doing, and it's just sort of dovetails nicely together. And yeah, we're working together. We got a big tour. That album came about because we started working together in 2023, and he asked me to support him. So we did a full band tour the next year, and then I said, let's do a duo tour,
Wow.
and then let's record the duo tour. And he had a load of albums coming out. He had a very busy release schedule. And Lisa, his wife, was worried. You didn't want too much coming out at the same time. So I said, well, why don't I sing on the album? So I got sponsorship from my local arts board in Jersey, and we recorded it in about 3 hours in the hotel. We were in the afternoon,
Wow.
of the gig. It just flowed. And he told me stories about all the artists that he played with in between, and it was really great. And it went on to do really well. Got the Blues Blast Music Award, and I'm the first UK winner of that in its history, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and really, but I think it just shows the power of music, because it cuts through generations and social backgrounds, and it becomes like, if you can play and if you can build a musical relationship with an artist, it doesn't matter where they're from or who they are. It
Yes, sir.
it really, and you see this there. I was watching a documentary on I forget his full name, but Niels, I think Pedersen, who was the double bass player with Oscar Peterson. He was from Denmark, and you know, he just, you wouldn't think that a great jazz bass player would come from Denmark, but he played with everyone from He was Oscar Peterson's bass player for 15 years. Dexter Gordon, Stefan Grappelli, all of these different Count Basie. So really, that, if you're really into something, because obviously someone like John Primer is, and I've worked and toured with John, and he's really deeply, when he's having downtime, he's watching Muddy Waters videos, and BB
Is
King
he
videos.
really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. So what, if they feel that you're really into it, then and the musical relationship on stage is simpatico, then it's great. So yeah, so that came out, and that's done really well. And no, that's something I'm really proud of. Really proud of.
Very cool. The new album is called Nine Blues Originals.
Yeah.
And as solo efforts go, Giles, this might be some of your best work. And it's
Thank you.
interesting that you talked about Chicago blues early in the interview because top to bottom, that's what I felt. I would love to have you talk about the process for writing this one, if you would.
Yeah, well, I mean, I come up with, if I hear an interesting catchphrase that I'll write that down, and so for example, ain't got a dog in that fight, was a phrase that my wife Robin Capsalis, who's a blues singer, she got nominated for Best Emerging Artist at the Blues Music Awards this year. We were just having a conversation, and that she came out with. We were talking about a situation between two people, and she said, "I don't care. I ain't got a dog in that fight." And I was like, "Wow!" So I wrote it down, and stuff like cheap and blended. Talking about the cheap and blended scotches and stuff. Anything that captures my imagination. And also, there was one track in there that's for Memphis Slim. So I sort of modified, because Memphis Slim has been a big. I would credit the influence of Memphis Slim really greatly on my career progress since about 2020, because I didn't really understand his music's interesting because it's bluesy, but it doesn't have. It's got a more urbane, tight and polished feel. It's not as sort of, it doesn't have that blues feeling that I fell in love with, but I studied him because someone sent me a photo of Memphis Slim standing next to a Rolls Royce with tails. He had tails on, a jacket with tails, and he signed his name with the Slim with a dollar sign through it. And I remember someone telling me years ago when I started how well he'd done. So I started to research him and how he'd done so well. And so I've listened to did a deep dive during lockdown into his presentation and his. I saw a photo of him in the Ultra Maillet jazz club in Paris, which is a tiny cellar jazz club. And I got this idea of doing intimate blues shows, just myself and a guitar player, from that photo of Memphis Slim. Because thing is with blues, sometimes it's you sometimes people try and make it too big and spend money to try and sell out arenas and stuff, which is never going to happen. And I want to, with what I do, I like going small. I like tiny shows, intimate shows, acoustic shows. And I saw that in that, a well-dressed musician in an intimate environment. And that really fired me up. And I did a deep dive into every bootleg live recording I could find, every interview. I talked to musicians that he worked with in France. I worked a bit with a pianist that recorded with him, and I wanted to pay tribute to him because and this song, Boogieing and a Bluesing, he talks about going from town to town, and I was touring up to 18 countries a year, so I was, playing boogies and blues. So I was like, I could understand that. So I reworked it and put some of my own, winning the my own experiences in it, winning the award in Memphis, playing on breakfast TV, going to Chicago and picking up skills in a Southside Lounge. And I went to Chicago in 2008 and went to Artists' Lounge on the South Side, Linda's Place, Lee's Unleaded when it was the old Lee's Unleaded, and really picked up a lot of skills from those entertainers. And of course, there's a tribute in there to Joe Louis Walker, and that's based around a riff. And a lot of them, base around riffs. Ain't Got a Dog in That Fight, that's based around a riff. And then originally I had a different backing, but then I, thought put a traditional shuffle underneath it, and it sounded better. What else is there? Miss Heaven and Go to Hell. About just to pick these little catchphrases up from the history of blues, because they're so, blues lyrics are so rich in and you can just take little lyrics or just one line and then build a whole song around it.
Yes,
um
sir.
and there's one in there, Never Too Clever for the Blues, which is it's like the humbling effect of life and how blues will be there, because sooner or later life is going to do something to you that something's going to happen in your life that's going to humble you somewhat, no matter how high you're flying. And I've seen it, happen to a lot of my friends who high flyers, but then something comes along and humbles them, and that's part of the aging process, and that's part of the process of living life. And so that's what that's about. And what else is there on there? Miss Heaven, Go to Hell. Me and My Righteous Girl. I got that line from Memphis Minnie. So she was singing Me and My Righteous Man,
Okay.
and then I switched that around because I thought that was a lovely line. So I switched that around to Me and My Righteous Girl. I think that's really about me and my wife, and yeah. So I love the blues, and that's where I get the song ideas from. And I'm a big believer in traditional 12 bar blues. I think that people write it off. I think because up until 10 years ago, it really depended on radio play for your, increased success. And I think that's why people just wrote off the 12 bar blues because it was never a great fit for commercial radio. But I'm a
Right.
massive, artistically, it's never ending. I will be writing and performing 12 bar blues till I die. I think it's an incredible art form, and it's so flexible and there's so much variety that you can put in there. Like Me and My Righteous Girl, we did base that sort of minimalist guitar chordal approach on from a Memphis Mini approach, which I've never done before. But you listen to all this stuff and you want to take little bits.
Indeed. And I have to tell you, for anybody that wants an album that is true blues, this is the one. Absolutely.
Well,
Now,
thank you.
I always try to pick out a few favorites when I do a promotional episode like this for an album. But the fact of the matter is, I've found it difficult to pick just a few. It's that damn good. But if I had to, Cheap and Blended is right up there. I Ain't Got a Dog in This Fight. And it's funny you mentioned these tracks already. Track 5, If You Forgive Me, you were channeling some serious Charlie Musselwhite on that one. It took me back to the song "Your Dirty Look" and "Your Sneaky
Oh
Grin"
yeah, yeah, yeah.
gave me vibes of Stand Back from 1967.
Oh, great,
And then,
man.
of course, your homage to your friend and mentor, the late Joe Louis Walker. Those were just some of my favorites. You and Joe really developed a close bond, didn't you?
Yeah, well, he told me, he said we went out to Mystique, and I got a good. He just wanted to play with me. He really liked what I was doing, and he said I created my own musical world, and we were like musical brothers. And it really was true, man. I mean, I just went out to Mystique. I went out to Mystique to hang out with him and just talk blues with him. I mean, it was.
Yes, sir.
I have tremendous respect for Joe, and really, and I organised his last ever tour. We did a tour together in the Channel Islands, and I knew, I knew that that he was struggling a bit, and I just gave everything to him. I mean, we just, we treated him well, and he had a really great time. And his wife Robin said how, and because a couple of about a month later he passed away, and
Wow.
it was really tough. It was really, and it's
Yes,
still
sir.
really, because he was he was something else, and I really, deeply grateful for having the chance to pick up some of his, because with these guys like with him and with John, who I'm incredibly grateful to as well. I mean, it's just hanging out and playing with them. You just through osmosis, you pick up stuff, and with John, I've definitely picked up, some, a greater sense of rhythm and feeling, and I told him the last time with John, because I make sure I tell these guys all the time how grateful I am, just so they know. And I told John last time that I was, was grateful because I have all everything that he's taught me for the rest of my life. I told him that in those words. So I just got to make sure that they know, because it's, John. Well, when John's gone, I don't think there's going to be many people that can do what he can do. Because it's coming from a completely. I mean, it's like it's pure Mississippi. I mean, it's pure Mississippi Chicago blues,
Yes, sir.
uh, and it's very hard because it's all in about. It's not about what you're playing. It's about how you play, and that's a lot harder to teach. How it's a lot harder to teach how you play something as to what you play, and
Yes,
it's a
sir.
lot harder to emulate. So when he's gone, I don't know who's going to carry that on, but I'm just grateful that I managed. I can stand or sit on stage with him and uh, grab whatever I can. And I think he's very happy that myself and also the great band that we have when we work in Europe, Pascal Delmar and Antoine Escalier, are really serious and committed to playing as well as we can behind him.
Yes, sir. So, what kind of touring plans do you have for this new album, man? You got anything stateside this time, or is it going to all be on the European side?
Well, I'm working towards getting a green card, so I want to get out to the States. I want to because I self promote my own shows. So I do. They're called Up Close with the Blues, and I sold out 10 nights on the Edinburgh Fringe by self promoting back in 2023. And really, the plan was always to really push my own shows, but I get, because I bring over American legends, I get the
Sure.
chance to work with them as well, and it's too good an opportunity to miss. I just want to learn as much as I can. So I'm building up towards taking these small shows to small rooms in the States, and getting a green card. I'm married to an American, and we want to work together as well in the States, Robin and myself. And
Indeed.
so yeah, I've just had I've had a very busy year. I'm going off the end of next week for a 7 day tour of Spain with John and the band, and we're playing Spain's largest blues festival, Cazorla, which is about 4,000 people in a
Wow.
massive ballroom. I did it last year, and it's so hot out there. We have to play. It starts at 11 o'clock at night, and we're playing at 2 a.m. in the morning. Just to
Oh, no
goes,
kidding.
goes all the way through the night. So
Wow.
yeah, it's going to be great. It's really really cool. And then yeah, I'm just going to get my own little shows together. Then we go out a couple of weeks later to the Azore Islands in the Mid-Atlantic, and with John. And then I've got some more stuff with in October. But then I'm trying to build up my own shows
Sure.
again. Because I do about up to 17 a month of the small shows, and that's what really I love that. Because I prefer playing unless I'm playing with like a John Primer or whoever. For myself personally, as an artist, I like playing in the small solo, duo situation. That's where my heart is for my own
Right.
work. Because with the harp, it's you're not battling against the drums or the bass or the guitar. And it becomes a conversation between you and the guitar player, and you feel a real connection with the audience being in such a small format.
Indeed. Okay, where can we send people to learn more about you, your incredible body of work, maybe to buy some merch or an amazing album or two, or get you booked for a gig?
Well, you can go if you want to contact me. You can go either through Facebook, it's just Giles Robson or Giles Robson Blues Artist, or go via my website, gilesrobson.com, and just listen to me on the streaming services, and then pick up an album at a show. I only really sell my albums, vinyl and CD at shows these days. So
Okay.
you can catch it. You can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music, and pick up a copy at a show. And I'm going to be just building and updating. So just and then reporting back on the any news or reviews that this album generates. And I'm just I'm in a really good place personally. I really love this music, and it's the sort of music. The older that you get, the better it gets. So it's I feel really blessed that I found the music, or I found the blues, or the blues found me, whichever way around. And also it's a really lovely community of people. Really it's got such a committed, like yourself. You're putting all this effort into helping to
Thank you.
promote it, and I really and I really love the community. So it's I really feel blessed, and I thank everyone out there for supporting me and keeping me going.
Well, Giles Robson, it has been a pleasure, sir. I wish you safe travels and good fortune as you embark on the next chapter with this album. And I'm
Thank
going to
you.
do my best to get out to see you if you make it over stateside for sure. How's that?
Wonderful. It'd be great to catch up in person and see you at a show.
Indeed. All right. Well, as this episode comes to a close, I want to tell you about the VFW National Home, located just about 30 miles southwest of my current location in Eaton Rapids, Michigan. The VFW National Home assists military, veterans, and their families and children by creating a foundation of services and resources to achieve their personal and family goals in order to move forward in a positive, safe, and healthy environment. Among the many things offered through the VFW National Home are single-family homes within the community at no cost, tutoring, classes, secondary financial assistance, and educational resources to empower and grow. And by the way, they also offer licensed daycare for their residents at no charge. Please visit vfwnationalhome.org today to learn more, and you can make a tax-deductible donation while you're there. And as always, thank you so much for your consideration. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to Giles Robson, but also to you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. Now, for more information about cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham. You can find this episode and past episodes of Time Signatures at lccconnect.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby, I'm home.
Ooh, shuggy ducky.